there are different types of federalism, and these different types of federalism are just different philosophies on how the federal and state governments should interact with each other. And throughout the course of our United States history, we have had different views, and those views have changed. So we're going to start with dual federalism. Pretty clearly, in the first half of our history as a nation, we had a dual federalism. And dual federalism means that each level of government, the state and the federal government, had very clear, distinct powers. Each level or layer, federalism and state, you could clearly identify what is it that the federal government is responsible for doing and what is it that the states are responsible for doing. So it was very clear that the federal government took care of diplomacy, war, taxes, and national security. I'm trying to think of some, I'm going through history right now. Major financial crises and economic policy, but not a lot of little small things. And the states would handle the smaller things like education, they would handle building roads within their state, they would handle agriculture within their state. Okay, so there was very specific things that the federal government and state government did. Pretty clear. Now we can compare dual federalism to layer cake federalism. So you see this image right here for layer cake federalism, where your national government is clearly separate from your state government's powers. Okay, that changed in 1932. And think about what's going on historically in 1932. Yeah, the Great Depression. The Great Depression required the federal government to become more involved in states' matters. And it's really something that hasn't changed. So from 1932 to today, because of the Great Depression and the New Deal policy and the New Deal solutions, you see that the national and state government actually work together to solve more problems. Okay, so you can't really tell where the national government power ends and the state's responsibility begins. Just like marble cake. If you cut into a piece of marble cake, you're not sure where the chocolate stops or where the vanilla stops. Are you going to be able to determine that you can get just a bite of state power or just a bite of national government power? No, it's all mixed in together. So when it comes time to blame one level of government for some bad policy, it makes it difficult. Like the interstate system. The interstate system was created by the federal government, and the federal government gives the states money to operate their interstate system, but the states are the ones who have to build the roads, maintain the roads, and the states are the ones that have to pay for a lot of that road maintenance. Also, education, the educational system. You have counties that hire the teachers, that set the curriculum, but you have states that make standardized tests, like the SOLs, and the states that make a framework for the curriculum that the counties have to write. And then you have the national government, and the national government says that you have to meet these standards. That's No Child Left Behind. So when something goes wrong in education, it's really hard to blame one level of government over another because they're so involved in working together in education. Now, I said it's opposite of Devolution Revolution. I'll get to Devolution Revolution with this, our federalism. Our federalism is really pushed by conservatives or Republicans. Our federalism is a return to dual federalism almost, where the federal government power should be limited and the national government or the federal government should be smaller. And we need to give back the states or give to the states back those rights and responsibilities that we took from them in 1932 and beyond. Okay, so if we took their ability to make education policy, we need to give the states the rights to be able to do it again. If we took away the states' rights to implement a welfare program, we need to give the states that power to implement welfare. If we took the states' power to maintain health care or agriculture in their state, we need to hand it back to them. That phenomenon of handing the states back power that was previously taken by the federal government is called Devolution Revolution. So we are going to devolve, which means reverse power from the national government and give it back to the states. That devolution revolution was pushed in the Nixon administration and also in the Ronald Reagan administration. Okay. Expanding national government's power. So I just told you the types, but the Supreme Court has made some important decisions and interpreted the role of the federal government in a way that has allowed the federal government to acquire more and more power. Now, the guide for the Supreme Court when making decisions on whether or not it should be the federal government's power or the state's government power is generally the Supremacy Clause. Okay, the Supremacy Clause. All officials that work at any level of government swear an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States. And states cannot overrule the national policy, national law, or national treaties, and they certainly can't overrule the Constitution. Now, that obviously became a problem when the southern states tried to nullify United States policies toward taxing and import taxes with the nullification crisis. And it goes on. Hold on. Mr. Geromin decided that he's going to walk through the room and make a bunch of noise. Okay. All right, so bye. Okay. So the Supremacy Clause went into effect during the nullification crisis and the Civil War. Okay, so the Civil War was the fact that the southern states left the Union. That was reason enough to conduct war with the southern states to try to make them a part of the United States again, because by leaving the Union, they broke that oath to uphold the sanctity of the Constitution. Also, you'll see that the states kind of broke the rules of supremacy with the civil rights during the civil rights movement, or before the civil rights movement, with Jim Crow laws, which called for segregation, and with black codes, which made it difficult for black males and then later black females to be able to participate in the political system through voting. So like any bad kid, when you break the rules, your parents are going to have an easier time expanding their power over you. So if you break curfew, then your parents are going to probably punish you. When the states broke the oath of the Constitution and didn't follow it during the Civil War or during the Civil Rights Movement, or when the states couldn't take care of themselves during the Great Depression, you're going to see the national government get more power. And once we give the national government power, it almost becomes impossible to hand that power back to the states. Taxing and spending. With taxing and spending, Congress grants money to states. Congress may not be able to regulate agriculture and education, but they can control the money the states have to do these things. They give the money to the states, then they can set the standards for the states. Just like if your parents give money to you, they might be able to tell you how to use that money. And the national government also has the ability to do what is necessary. So in the case of McCulloch v. Maryland, again, the national government established a bank in 1819. It was necessary for them to establish the bank. Okay, so remember your necessary and prop clause. It was necessary for the national government to establish the bank because they were collecting taxes, which is an express power. And remember, the necessary and proper clause says that Congress can do what is necessary to carry out their express powers. So it's not like Congress members were collecting the taxes from people or collecting taxes from businesses and stuffing it under their mattress. We needed a place to put our national revenue. So we established a bank in the state of Maryland. The president of the bank's name is McCulloch, and Maryland tries to put a tax on the national government and on the bank. They said if your bank is in the state of Maryland, Maryland can then tax your bank and make revenue off of it. The president of the national bank's name was McCulloch, like I said, and McCulloch sued Maryland because he didn't think it was right that the national government should have to pay a tax to the states. Making a bank was necessary to carry out its express powers. They had to put the bank somewhere. They chose the state of Maryland. That doesn't give Maryland the right to tax the federal government. And the Supreme Court said, you are correct. A state cannot tax a national government entity because of the supremacy clause. And a state can't, just because a state might be against a national bank doesn't mean that they can tax it, because a national bank was necessary to carry out the express powers of the national government. Okay, and then the last one that's used, Commerce Clause. Remember, Commerce Clause is the constitutional justification for regulating a lot of what we do, and it is the constitutional justification for expanding government power. Okay. Commerce Clause didn't always mean regulation of all trade and all exchange of services between the states. That's true with Gibbons v. Ogden. In the case of Gibbons v. Ogden, the state of New York granted a steamboat operator a monopoly to operate between New York and New Jersey. So New York gave Ogden the monopoly. Now Gibbons started a business, and he also wanted to operate on this river. Okay, Ogden sued Gibbons because Ogden, according to the state of New York, had the sole proprietary, or meaning a monopoly, he had the sole proprietorship to operate that steamboat. Gibbons countersued, claiming that the U.S., not New York, could be the only entity that gives the right to operate in between states. And the Supreme Court agreed. So, kind of like this cartoon says right here, wrong. That New York gave the United States the exclusive right to regulate interstate commerce when New York decided to ratify the Constitution. Therefore, New York cannot give you the exclusive right, Ogden, to run your monopoly. And the Supreme Court agreed in Gibbons v. Ogden.